don't have to open it from the top. It just flips open, almost like some Band-Aid containers, you can do that. And then you can take a strip out. Super easy.
Yeah. And then here's the foil wrap. So when they come in these thin little foil wraps, you open the foil, right? It just peels open. And just for, just why not? Just for some viewing pleasure, let's just go ahead and drop that water soluble.
Actually, it's really pretty.
Water soluble fiber in the water.
Yes. So what I first want to talk about is really neurodegenerative diseases and how it's plaguing us. And obviously what we have to work with the drugs on the market, clearly they're not working. Otherwise we would be in a much better situation than we are.
Not very promising.
Not at all. And it's very sad. And it's something that's always on my mind with aging. It's just because you see people that go through it, your loved ones, your friends. And it's very, very scary. I mean, I think we know at least two handfuls of at least friends' parents or aunts, uncles, my aunt personally going through this. And it's just a very sad thing. So when it comes to what goes on there, we talk about mitochondrial metabolism. You've heard us talk about mitochondria. Those are the powerhouses of our cells. Those are the things that are responsible for the energy. So what happens as we age, as our brains age, is our mitochondrial metabolism decreases. So that energy production inside there, in all of our cells in our body, that energy production goes down. It's not happening like it should. And that leads to, for simple cases, just memory loss, lack of focus.
Sure.
But then obviously our extreme cases, our dementia, our Alzheimer's, which Parkinson's, all very, very, very prevalent and again, scary.
Yeah.
So the goal is to take supplements, do things helpful for our body, lifestyle medicines that can prevent that from happening, that can come in and jump into that mitochondria and help that energy production. It's like your electron transport chain, but I know that's getting a little technical. And that's the goal with this. And that is really the goal with methylene blue.
It definitely is. 100%. I think today's discussion is as much about metabolic health as it is about a supplement. I think that supplements are only like one part when we talk about it. And, we talk a lot about aging and how the signs of aging originally start to show up. And for Lisa and I, most of the time we say, well, look, it's a physical sign. It looks like a lack of muscle mass. It looks like sarcopenia. It just looks like somebody that hasn't been able to maintain healthy lean muscle mass as they age. But unfortunately with brain health, and I don't like that term so much, but it's typically, a process that can start at any time, can really start at any age, especially now with our environment, the foods we eat, the toxins we're exposed to. So the environmental impacts are actually pretty great in this category.
And you don't recognize that it's going on. It's not visual, like you said, with like muscle loss. You don't recognize it's going on until it's a little bit there and too late.
Yeah, right. And so that now I'm starting to shift sort of my way of viewing aging a little bit. It's like, of course, there's the physical manifestations of not having enough muscle loss or muscle mass. But then you start thinking about the way the brain health sort of, the transgression of like the way it changes and evolves and how early of an age it can set in. And you can start with like, you hear people describe as brain fog or lack of focus or inattention, that kind of stuff. So anyway, that's really like, when I think about this discussion, I'm thinking metabolic health. And what does that even mean? She talked about mitochondria, she talked about electron transport chain, but really it's about like metabolism. Maybe we just can use that word as metabolic so that we're thinking about the movement of energy and how our bodies derive energy, and specifically how our brain is using the energy that's created and ways to optimize.
With metabolism, I'm sure your first thought is like we talk about, we want to increase our metabolism in our bodies so we can lose weight, right? That's increasing the energy production. So it's the same thing, but it's going inside, it's in the cell,
right,
on a cellular level.
Sure. Yeah, exactly. So I think that's what we should do. I think we should talk a little bit about the way the mitochondria works, the way that our energy is moved. It's not created or destroyed. It's a transfer of energy, and the way that aging sort of starts to slow down that whole entire process. So, okay. All right. So cellular health. So think about the brain as being an energy demand center, a very high energy demand center, the brain and the heart. But the brain is only about 2% of our body weight, yet it's about 20% of our energy consumption. And the brain also, along with the spinal cord, is considered the central nervous system. And there's an entire barrier. It's called the blood-brain barrier that protects the central nervous system. And so what that does, it's designed so that toxic metabolites and things can't really easily cross it and get into the CNS. That's the whole idea. And we'll come back to that in a few minutes when we start talking about methylene blue and exactly how it works. But within the cells, just on a basic cellular level, we learned in like high school biology, I still learned the word powerhouse, but the mitochondria act as powerhouses. That's where the energy is transferred. It gets moved and it gets designed or put into a way that the body can use. So within the mitochondria, you actually have a process called the electron transport chain. And that's the process, and I'm going to use an analogy similar to like a train going down the tracks. So for cellular energy, typically it's glucose. For normal respiration energy, it'll use glucose. And it'll burn up the glucose and it'll create metabolites, which typically in this case are oxidants or free radicals. So a train is going down the tracks burning coal. Well, it's transferring its energy, it's making energy, and then it's creating toxic metabolites in the form of smoke. And so the body has a very big job of cleaning up this mess. And it's a constant mess that it's going through and cleaning up. And as we age, sometimes those systems start to break down. A typical cell, I think, has between 1,000 and 2,000 mitochondria. But again, as we age, we're constantly tearing them down, building new, making new, making new. And over time, as we start to see the system sort of break down, I think that's when you start seeing the signs of aging and the signs of disease really start to set in. It's a mitochondrial-based disease process. And it seems like that's really where most of our anti-aging experts and longevity pioneers were really putting a lot of effort into this category.
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. Let me see what I have for my notes. I think we can talk about methylene blue then now, Lisa. Why don't we go into that? So, all right, first of all, guys, this came up with Lisa and I as we're talking. Do me a favor and be aware of your searches, your internet searches. You will find stuff out there that is not accurate. There's a lot of misinformation in this topic. So just don't, try to validate or verify the source of information that you're getting. Methylene blue has been around for over a century, probably 150 years or so. It was originally developed as a synthetic dye. It is in the form of a salt. It later was found, because the way that it was being used to dye slides and for microbiology, that they identified that it was killing viruses and bacteria. And eventually it was used as a treatment for malaria. So widely known for treating malaria. Scientists then started to really study this molecule significantly. I think the World Health Organization still has it listed as an essential medicine because of its utility. But what's cool about methylene blue is that it's a really small molecule, and it has both water-loving and fat-loving properties. And that's key for the blood-brain barrier.
I was going to say, because it
readily crosses the blood-brain barrier. It goes quickly across, mostly because of its fat-loving properties, and then, of course, being 300 some Daltons. It's a small molecule. But by doing so, it really gets right into the brain and the spinal column. And that's where we'll start to talk about the way that this thing works, the mechanism of action, and of course we'll start talking about dosing, some of the side effects, and all of those as well.
Okay, awesome.
So, yeah. Okay, cool. All right.
And I will say, when Ryan said about the studies, your sources, if you'd like some, just go ahead and reach out to me so I can send them to you, because it does make a big difference. Again, you can type anything into Google and you could get one saying this and one saying that, but what's the validity of those? You got to know your sources.
And we'll come back to this a little bit, but I have clinical references from being a pharmacist, and I pay for them, and so I'll reference those, and those are almost, those are all evidence-based. They're tied to clinical trials and studies, and often that's where I'll turn to for my information, and of course I'll check on some of the simple searches as well. But yeah, she's right. Be careful with the information you get. All right, so how does methylene blue work? Well, primarily because the way that it's still being used today to treat cyanide poisoning and carbon monoxide poisoning, it's a condition called methemoglobinemia. It's a case where there's not enough oxygen being delivered to the tissues, basically. So this has the ability to increase the amount of cellular respiration in the brain, so it carries more oxygen. It can do that because of its ability to synthesize heme proteins. And if you look up heme, and you look at the function of heme, you'll start to see and understand a little bit more about how this product works. Methylene blue is also a potent antioxidant as well. And going back to the idea of cellular respiration on that electron transport chain and using glucose, they do create toxic metabolites in the form of free radicals. So having that antioxidant highly concentrated in the brain is of benefit.
Right. And that's always the Pac-Man analogy, right? It comes in and it eats those free radicals.
Yeah. So what's very unique about methylene blue is it's considered a redox agent. It can kind of ping pong. It can flip its role pretty significantly. So within the mitochondria, there's a process called the electron transport chain. It also goes by their name, citric acid cycle, Krebs cycle. But this is the chain that transfers energy. And it does so by using electrons. And so the fact that methylene blue is an electron donor is a really big deal. So it can actually donate electrons to electron transport chain. It can also recycle those electrons. That's its part in regulating and helping to to supplement the mitochondria
to produce more energy. That's all the goal there.
Yeah. So obviously, with all of this being said, again, the name of the game here is we're focusing on the fact that it's highly concentrated in the brain and it's deeply involved in mitochondria and energy production.
Yep.
So what does all that mean? So it's going to help us with all of the things that we've just talked about. So from an aging perspective, I know you were just looking at studies now, that statistical significance with improvements in Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, so neurodegenerative diseases, still widely being studied and used. It helps with memory, focus, cognition. They say it out of the mental agility. They said you feel plugged in, a sense of focus.
Right.
All of these things are what people report after taking methylene blue.
Sure. And some of these studies that I was just reading, from these doctors reporting that it just like stopped, the Alzheimer's in its tracks, the methylene blue, and it's just kind of crazy to like hear that such a strong point. Like, wow. And so I'd love to again share those with you guys if you're interested in that. But it's just so many promising benefits. And again, what we have our hands on from the medical system right now for brain health is just so limited, and it's just not working.
It's not working. Not working. And it's killing. I mean, it's our caregivers are the ones that suffer the most burden. So shout out to all you caregivers out there. I know how difficult that is on you. But we haven't even started to see the real fallout, the pain from this unfortunately, this growth of a chronic disease that we're seeing. So we've got to start doing a lot more about it. And look, hopefully methylene blue resonates with you. And if it does, great. But the point of today's conversation is just to share our thoughts on how this can possibly improve your mitochondrial health and potentially have a role in the things we're talking about.
Right.
So, all right, how do we take it? Let's talk about dosing. Let's talk about the best way to take methylene blue. Let's go to the thing. We'll get some questions and we'll see, because I get a lot of questions. So right now, first question, you want to answer? You want to go? Pharmaceutical grade. That's the big one.
You would go there.
All right.
I've had like 5 emails.
So from pharmacy perspective, is it pharmaceutical grade? You guys are absolutely right for asking the question about the grade of methylene blue, because it is there's industrial dyes out there that are like covered in metals, high in metal content. So you're absolutely spot on to be asking about what grade it is. Now, look, the reality is that nothing is really pharmaceutical grade unless you're in pharmaceutical manufacturing. However, with that said, this is in fact methylene blue USP. All right, USP would be considered the equivalent or the source for pharmaceutical grade manufacturing. That's really, really important. So we'll load the certificate of analysis as well as the metals test up on the website so you guys can reference that, because that's a problem. So if you're using other methylene blues, just make sure that they have USP, make sure they have their metal testing, and take a look at the C of A to just look at the C of A as well. But the metal testing would be separate. So, all right, that's a big one, and good question. All right, what else? Anything?
I think that was really the
dosing. I think I get a lot of, and drug interactions.
Yeah.
All right, so dosing is published most to do with intravenous. So intravenous use is common with methylene blue. All hospitals have it on hand.
A lot of functional medical their clinics do methylene blue IVs.
Yep. So looking even at the clinical literature, it shows about 1 to 2 milligrams per kilogram per day. That's typically IV usage. You're seeing 0.5 to 4, so 0.5 milligrams to 4 milligrams per kilogram per day IV. And so if you assume the fact that there's 100% absorption bioavailability in IV, which is what you should do, then orally dosing, you would think you would need more. But however, more is not always better, especially with methylene blue. There's a hermetic dose response with methylene blue. You potentially could have the reverse effect at high doses. So what are those high doses? High doses are probably anything over 10 milligrams per kilogram per day. Like that would be extremely high, right? And that's just per kilogram means it's 2.2 pounds in a kilogram. But let's just assume it's an even two and we'll cut it in half. So I said it would be 10 milligrams per kilogram. Let's just do 5 milligrams per pound. You know, for me, that'd be 1,000 milligrams in a day. I weigh 210 roughly. It'd be 1,000 milligrams in one day. This is 20 milligrams per film. And there's 15 films in the box, right? So we're not talking about high dosages here. We are not even anywhere even close. As a matter of fact, the low dose range is about 20 milligrams to 60 milligrams orally. So we're on the low of the low, but at 20 milligrams has been shown to be plenty effective. That's the point. You don't need to go high in your dosages, and nor should you, because then you can start to run into other problems. So you'll know that, first of all, pregnancy and breastfeeding is contraindicated. Do not consume methylene blue if you're pregnant or breastfeeding. If you have a G6PD genetic mutation, you should not take methylene blue. And if you don't know, that's something you can ask your doctor for. But, you know, most people would know. And then, of course, there's the third one, the big one. So what do I do if I'm currently taking an SSRI or an SNRI for mental health or for mood depressive disorder? So the prevailing theory is that this increases serotonin through a mechanism called MAOI. However, that's typically seen in high doses, much higher doses. So at 20 milligrams, the risk, okay, let me back up. The risk would be serotonin syndrome. It's basically when you have too much serotonin and bad things can happen. We're not seeing, I have no evidence, there's no literature, there's nothing to support the fact that 20 milligrams would cause serotonin syndrome. So with that said, I still recommend, though, if you're on an SSRI or an SNRI or any type of antidepressants, an MAOI, which you don't see that often anymore, you should still consult with your provider. And if he says no, hard no, don't touch it, you should say something to the effect, well, 20 milligrams orally doesn't seem to be a high dose. Do you have any literature to support that it'd be a problem for me? Because actually what we're finding is that people that are using this that have mental or mood disorders, they're deriving a tremendous amount of benefit out of it.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So I hate for people to get stuck in this misinformation loop where they just don't know what to do and they get scared and they become paralyzed with fear, you know, and unfortunately, I feel like that's very unfortunate. So anyway, do a little bit of digging. If you need some literature from me, I'll be happy to supply it to you. No problem at all. So again, dosing wise, I think we're in a good situation here at 20 milligrams. It's per film. There's 15 films per box. We suggest using one every other day. That's why there's 15 in there for a 30-day supply. And if you want to take it 15 days straight in a row, you can do that as well. If you want to take it for 2 months straight in a row, you can do that as well. But my message, and Lisa I think agrees, is that we're actually trying to help you restore the normal function of your mitochondria. And this is one part or one, say, like tool in your belt to help you do that.
Right. So like say, I know I've had the question like, can you just take one when you need a little bit of mood enhancing?
Yeah.
So one here, one there, one there.
Mm-hmm.
Sure, you can. But again, the goal is to get that mitochondrial functioning properly to prevent that mitochondrial metabolism, the decrease that happens as our brains age. So it's just like when you take supplements on a regular basis. It's, you know, you're not just taking your vitamin D one day here because you didn't maybe get outside enough. You're taking it to maintain a level. So there's a purpose. There's a purpose.
So methylene blue is good in fasting. I don't think I would not recommend this later in the day near bedtime. It doesn't make sense to me. I like it first thing in the morning.
Because it does.
Yeah, and especially if you're still intermittent fasting, it does increase autophagy. So that's the cleanup of the cell. It's taking out the junk of the cell. So it can help with that process as well. And there's another part to this. I would like for you guys, if it's possible, once you take methylene blue, you can go out and seek natural sunlight. And by doing so, it actually increases this, it provides like a synergistic response to the mitochondria. It can actually help sort of provide more ATP and increase the mitochondria.
Right. And if you don't have sunlight, I have had this question a lot. If you have any form of red light therapy access to in your home or in, you know, a facility, that's really where the studies are done on it. Because that's how it's controlled. But it doesn't have to be a lot, right? Like
No.
It could just be
10 minutes,
a lot,
max.
but it doesn't have to be full body. I mean, you could just have a little bit of,
Pounds,
there's handheld little red light things for people use for, you know, pain and stuff. You could use that red light.
It's called photobiomodulation. That's the way that this photon energy from the sun or the light helps increase the cellular respiration and mitochondrial function. So definitely check that out. Within 30 minutes of taking it, go out, you can get 5, 15, 20 minutes of sunlight, just exposing your skin to it. And I think that's good for us as a whole anyway.
Right. I mean, I honestly, personally, I love taking it before like a morning walk in the sun. Because during my walks is where my wheels are spinning a lot, lots of thinking and planning and stuff going on. Carrying a rock, yeah. So I really like it for that. It kind of gets it all done. But you do it how it works for you. Again, Ryan said there's 15 films in here, and I'm just going to throw out the price there because to me this is crazy. For members, it's only $12.95. So 30-day supply of Metileno Blue for $12.95. Crazy. Non-members, the retail price $19.95. Let's talk a little bit about how maybe the blue.
Yeah, it's on my tongue.
Okay.
I had mine this morning.
Yes, and so did I. So I'm going to show you how ours is different because we're still experimenting a little bit. And if you were on Friday's call, you would have seen how Ben's mouth went. So what Ben did is he put the film in his mouth, let it completely dissolve, but he let it all go in, his mouth. That's going to leave you a lot of blue. If you want that, go for it. But we're typically talking to people and seeing people, and yeah, it's a great conversation starter, but we don't want blue mouths all day. So I'm going to show you mine.
Oh, not bad, really not
Just
much.
my very back. So what I did is I took the film, horizontal. I set it down in the back I kept my mouth open. As you can feel it starts to dissolve on your tongue, I just swallowed water. So it dissolves very, very fast. So I didn't close my mouth so it didn't go into the saliva all over and get everything blue. So I think that is going to be the way I do it, unless I really want blue.
Cool.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So figure out what works for you. Depending on where you place it on your tongue, I think this is a thing too, because obviously our taste buds are all different. They're different sections of our tongue. You might feel a little bit more bitter somewhere, might feel a little bit more minty somewhere. When I put it in the back this time, I had nothing.
Right.
I didn't even have mint. It was kind of weird. It just was like a neutral flavor. So
yeah, it can cause numbness and tingling a little bit.
Yeah,
it has a weird
that's completely normal. It will go away. How long does the blue last?
2 to 3 hours. Depends on how you.
No, the staining on your tongue.
Yeah.
I could think it can last all day. It depends on how it stains your tongue. I mean.
And it can cause blue your urine to be green because the blue mixed with the typical yellow.
Yeah, completely normal.
Normal. Okay.
Process.
Will you pull up some Q&A, see if there's anybody here that has any questions? We're running long, but again, that was kind of a new launch. So
this is recorded. Will be posted on our YouTube channel right after this. This is the Bluetooth challenge.
I like it, Joel. Let's do the Bluetooth
idea.
challenge. Send it over to what is it? Living Good.
Living Good with Ryan and Lisa.
Yeah. Post some on there. That's on Facebook.
Yeah.
That would actually be pretty funny, Joel.
Okay. You answered that, but you said.
Yeah. It's for Becky?
Yes.
Yeah. Hey, Becky. So you asked if you can take more of his brief at the start. You don't need to. As a matter of fact, I'm encouraging people to seek out more of a lifestyle approach to improving the mitochondrial function. But certainly, you could take this more than once a day. The oral suggested dose that I found on the clinical to deal with ifosfamide poisoning is like 50 milligrams 6 times a day. That's 300 milligrams orally. We're only talking about 20 milligrams of film. So if you did, and by the way, you can cut them in half. You could do 10 milligrams at a time. You could do 20 twice a day, 40. You figure out what works for you.
Is there any?
There is quite a bit out there. I'd suggest you do some searching with how this product relates to autism because we're showing there's obviously that's being studied as well.
Yeah, we did stir the cup. So you're not drinking this in water.
You can.
Yeah,
people ask if you want to drink it, you can drink it. You can put it in a few ounces of water.
Having like blue smile.
I don't see, but if you just did it in a few ounces of water, not as much as this, you could. I don't know. I haven't done it, but maybe I will, and I'll report back. Or you guys can let me know.
Right.
But it's water-soluble fiber. If you notice the ingredients, it's really minimal. It's kind of neat the way that the films work and the way that they're formulated.
The COA kit.
I'll send it to the tech today. I should have already done that. My apologies, but I'll send it up to the tech support today.
I feel like what happens sometimes we get so excited right when something arrives in the warehouse. That
I think Leslie, you might have already heard me answer this, but the form is methylene blue, not USP. It's USP form. What's that?
No.
Okay.
Age is 18 plus.
Yeah, 18 plus. But I read a lot of reports of being used in children and pets. That's not what this is formulated for, but. So Judy, that's an interesting one. So the question is it similar to NAD? Well, I mean, NAD, of course, if you research it, is involved in the electron transport chain, but NAD is another one where you could potentially upregulate. Your body could build a tolerance to it. With methylene blue, that's not the case. NAD is also very difficult to get in the form of NAD. So you either have to do it in injection and IV, but not really bioavailable orally. But good question, because NAD is a big part of the mitochondrial health.
Yes, we talked about helping with memory loss.
Memory, big thing with memory.
This is a question I got.
Yeah, I'll come back on that. Yeah, I don't see any real contraindications as far as age goes for elderly. Actually, it's being used now in advanced stages of people that have neurodegenerative diseases, so you're seeing it used in the elderly. I did answer that question from Riley about interactions with Zoloft. I would say just go back and listen to the Zoom if you missed that part, but not at this dose. I'm not concerned about it, but I still tell you that you should seek out approval from your medical provider, just because I think it's prudent.
I
don't know.
Take it out.
Oh, question about the dentures. Will it stay in the dentures? That's a dentist question. Maybe you can ask. I don't know. Maybe they'll have an answer for that for you. There are no adjustments. So there's a question from Lottie about how could be. Do you have to change the dose if your kidneys are compromised? I should know that answer, and I don't. I didn't think there was any dosage adjustments for like renal insufficiency. I will look at that though. Let me get back to you on any dosage adjustments or contraindications with kidney disease. Yeah, Sarah, I think you should get doctor approval because there's other meds on board that could interact. Yes. The gluton can last all day depending on how you apply it, whether the back of the tongue or the front of the tongue. Oh, you'll start feel. So there's a question from Lisa. How long does it take to see a change? You'll feel it, actually. You'll feel a sense of connection, focus, energy, mental, like agility is a word I've used. I mean, it just feels different, especially if you seek out some sun or red light.
Right.
Yeah.
Short-term memory loss, long-term memory loss.
I've heard people compare this to a ADHD medication. People have actually made that analogy that they felt like as if they were taking something for focus. Yes, a half a strip every day is okay. You would still want to cycle on and off. If you did a half and so just cut it in half, you did 10 milligrams, I would still say, well, do 15 days on, 15 days off, or 30 days on, 30 days off. There's no hard line in the sand about it. Actually, for people that are in the studies are using this every day long term, especially if they're using it for neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's and Parkinson's. So, yeah, I don't know. So it doesn't have to be on the red light. It can be anywhere on the body. Really, it can be the face. It could be the hands, the arms.
Yeah, I have a face mask.
Yeah, she has a face mask.
Put that one on.
Brushing your teeth, it may stain the toothbrush. If you try to do that, you might want to just get a dedicated brush to loosen it up. Rinse it with water, mouth and swallow. I think it would be helpful to do that.
But again, you guys remember.
Back of the tongue, not much dye.
Not much there at all to get on my teeth to get on anything.
This is front of the tongue 3 hours later.
And mine was like
So
2 hours later, back of the tongue.
Quite a bit of blue. Michelle, USP is added on the website, I think, or it should be you'll see it on the actual back of the box in the ingredients.
Which is also on the website.
Yeah. So you're right. It's not on the front, but on the back it is, on the panel. A lot of promise with ADHD. A lot of significant good studies encouraging things coming out on it.
Remember, we've never drank it. We were just showing the color. You can, but again, on the tongue. Yeah, this, you know.
Yes, you can cut it in half. They will stain your fingers a little bit too. It's just the craziest thing, the salt. I mean, you're seeing virucidal, you're seeing bactericidal. Like in SARS-CoV-2, like they were looking at it from in COVID and treating COVID, and also on the long haulers, there was so much hypoxia and respiratory distress. Remember all the people on the ventilator, that whole thing? Methylene blue started coming into the discussion. There was a lot of promise. I don't know where it stands right now, but that was another area of interest.
So Eddie, how do you know if you need this? So you have to think that everybody needs this, because what happens, how we just described about mitochondrial metabolism and what goes on, that is happening to everybody as we age. And of course, lifestyle things affect that, whether it goes slower or faster. But me personally, I'm not messing around with things that are going on up here. So I'm going to do everything that I can in my power to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, and I think, look, as you age, you see it, and you start to see lack some of the zest and the energy, and you start to feel, not yourself. And they describe it as brain fog and confusion and different things of that nature. Now, if you're not to that level, that's great, but maybe a time to stay proactive and focus on staying ahead of it.
Have you seen anything on traumatic brain injury?
Oh my gosh, yeah, a whole bunch of information on TBI. 4 years ago, would this be good for? So he had a traumatic brain injury 4 years ago. Would this be good for him? Yeah, so there's a strong study out on TBI where it showed statistical significance on improvement of symptoms. It was like oxygen deprived, some specific type of traumatic brain injury. And I don't know why it's not used more mainstream, because it seems to me that the evidence is very strong for TBI. Definitely, again, I hate to just say Google search, please, like that, be careful with that. But if you do Google that, you'll find some articles. You'll find it. I think the National Institutes of Health had a reference to it.
That's interesting.
Encephalitis, I'm not sure.
Yeah. I mean, I know I was reading studies that has to do with like Lyme disease and stuff like that. How
cerebral. So Caroline asked about cerebral. So it does increase cerebral blood flow or oxygenation, I guess you could say. It delivers more oxygen to brain cells, increases the respiration of the cell. So I think that's what you're asking.
Are there any side effects to be concerned about?
Not really. I mean, there's some small cases of self-reported side effects of like jitters or nervousness, but I don't think that's the normal. I have not seen anything that would say that would be to be expected. I've used it plenty of times and never felt a single thing but good stuff.
Right. And from what I read, what I was reading to say, it's all very rare. If there was ever a side effect, and if say there was any jitters, it subsides very shortly.
Yeah, it's okay to put in water. Maybe try putting it in a few ounces and then just slam it back. Use a shot glass. There you go, Aletta. Yes, it'll permanently stain your shirt. Did I get it on mine? Probably.
That's what I thought he was saying.
Yeah, probably. Yes, it is a stain. Yes, it will stain. A lot of questions, guys. I appreciate all the engagement. Thank you.
I would say if you're going to put it in water, just drink it solo.
Yeah, I don't think you want to sip on it. Chemotherapeutic. So if anyone is going through chemotherapy, has cancer, there's also some studies in the National Institute of Health and a thing called PubMed that show some interesting results.
Does it need to be taken away from any medications?
So high blood pressure is an interesting one. If you have uncontrolled hypertension, so high numbers that are uncontrolled without medication or even with medication you're uncontrolled, you should not be taking methylene blue. You really shouldn't be taking any supplement. You should be seeking professional help to manage your blood pressure. We've talked about that in other Zooms. Please watch our one on hypertension because you've got to manage your blood pressure. As a matter of fact, Lisa, you know this, that high blood pressure will contribute to mental decline pretty significantly and possibly put you at risk for a stroke.
Yes. Barry's just asking, my placement again doesn't have a blue tongue, so I just took it horizontally and I just put it on the very back, kept my mouth open. I'm telling you, it takes like a second for you to start to feel it dissolve. Once I did that, I just chugged water.
And it's going to take practice. Barry, I hate to say it, you might have to have that significantly blue mouth for a few times until you figure out what works best for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we nailed it. Okay. All right, awesome, guys.
Yep. Any other
That's it.
questions? You know how to reach us, but we have, we're at 30-ish minutes.
Wow. Sorry to keep you all so long. I just hope this was informative enough for you and answers a lot of your questions and concerns.
Yeah. And again, we'll get everything else on the website for your information. But
all right, y'all.
if you haven't had a chance, get your Metileno Blue, $12.95 for your members.
Bye, everybody. Have a great day. See you soon.